Chapter 25 Spirit Woman. When Fleet had disappeared in a night, the leaders of the tribe were seriously disturbed. The two senior men, Wide Shoulders and Two Teeth, and the ancient mother, Wise, who led the tribe, had become dependent on the intelligence Fleet brought each evening from her run ahead. Where had she gone, and why was she gone? A woman of middle years, who had once aspired to be one of the leaders but had no followers, now occupied the role of spirit woman, a position without power in the tribe but not without influence. She told anyone who would listen that the spirits had taken Fleet for the purpose of expressing their displeasure with the seemingly endless quest along the sea toward the setting sun. She spelled out her position around the central evening campfire on the half-moon after Fleet's disappearance. The children and the very young adults were around their own campfires, but almost all of the adults of the tribe were attending the central fire for the half-moon ceremonies. The fire was building toward full flame that dried, then devoured the green and moist wood of the seaside forests. Spirit Woman's presentation of her revelation was to come forth in the style she was developing for her spirit talks. Before she presented, she was a withdrawn lump of a woman, deep in the crowded cluster of tribe women, a hooded and bowed creature. She was childless. In her younger days, after her moon blood had started, she was courted and competed for among the young bucks. She had impatiently tolerated the winter's rutting, but hardly saw her rangy mate except at night when his lusty urges drew him away from his young male peers. These were not happy times for the maturing girl. After 6 months of this distant, uncomfortable mating, and no sign of impending motherhood, she exercised her option to seek another young man. She made her availability known at a full moon night ceremony, as was the custom. None of the potential mates came forward, all having heard of her unenthusiastic participation in the rutting. She became an old woman in the tradition of mateless females in the tribe. She would be assigned many new duties, caring for orphan children and cleaning the campsites when they moved on, leaving no trace, not even disturbed sand. She was deeply disturbed. "Not right!" screamed a voice in her mind, again and again and again. The voice spirits colonized her. She became a clear and evident spirit woman within months of becoming an old woman. All of the tribe could see it clearly, the tortured expressions on her face as she looked in panic around herself, as she heard what only she could hear. The searing voice of her dead mother declaiming her inferiority came to Spirit Woman, especially long after sunset and long before sunrise, when the tribe was asleep, but she rarely was. She felt deep fear when lights glowed around the words of tribe acquaintances. She had no friends. The sun lit other women more brightly, especially the young and comely, and made her feel its warmth in her sterile rudder when she looked upon them. All in the tribe sensed a spirit woman coming into existence in the place of the strange and aloof young woman who was now an old woman. In the half-moon after Fleet's disappearance, around the special campfire, Spirit Woman rose from the seat among the women and stumped back and forth. Then she ran around the fire, her arms waving like the wings of a sea-bird. All knew they were about to see some spiriting. She began her wail, the one she had first sent forth on the first night her mother came, clear as ice, and ripped her heart with her snarling denouncements. She had captured that wail in all its despair and anger to be repeated when she needed all her passion in a sound. The adults of the tribe felt the tremor and clutch of the wail up their backs and into their chins and tongues. The young children huddled together with their mothers, while the older ones clustered together and shared their nervous disdain. As the wail tapered off, the spirit voice came forth from Spirit Woman's immobile mouth. Her lips did not move and were barely open, yet the voice was clear and understandable. Not her voice either, some other. "We have stolen Fleet," said the eerie voice. It came again and again as Spirit Woman circled the fire. She rolled her eyes back into her head, a move that inspired shudders in the adults and emulation in the older children. "Stolen fleet! Stolen fleet!" There was a long pause as Spirit Woman walked around the fire, stiff-legged, abstracted. "Cease endless walk," came the voice. Spirit Woman clawed at her neck when the new message came forth. She shook her head violently as though denying the pronouncement. "Endless walk to nowhere." To end this march toward the sunset was an obsession gnawing inside her, and Fleet's disappearance was another confirmation to her that she was right. The voice repeated, "Endless walk," as she circled the fire, round and round, her ventriloquist voice chanting, "Cease endless walk," until she dropped to the sand, her face fully in it, and twitched all over. Finally she stopped moving except for the breath of enormous snores, sand spewing from beneath her cheek. This abandon the march was a divisive idea in the tribe. That the trek toward sunset, moon after moon, might be a grievous error was both a sacrilege and a challenge. Those in the minority who were beginning to move toward that opinion were those most burdened by the walking, camping, breaking camp, and walking more. Mother of 6, who had grown heavier with each childbirth, was an early convert. To her, the promise of the migration had eroded under the increasing discomfort of hauling her corpulence along the sand. The trek had taken the tribe past many beautiful and fruitful lands that could be the new home of the tribe, but no, onward they went. Mother of 6 was the first to see the wisdom in Spirit Woman's ideas. The leader triumvirate dismissed Spirit Woman because her belief convicted the migration as a mistake. The migration was the implementation of the will of the gods. The God messages had been unmistakable, irrefutable. It was a mission the gods themselves spelled out when the tribe ate magic together, and it was the leader's unanimous decision to press on until their destination presented itself. It would be the land of plentiful game and no enemies, the golden promise that had reassured the tribe in the grief of leaving all they knew in the lands of their ancestors. Besides, the Spirit Woman was a treacherous person in the leaders' minds. She had pursued her goals illicitly. She had told untruths to those who would believe. This was perhaps her greatest violation of the ways of the tribe. It was a new kind of violation. Much discussion went on about this. None could recall any member of the tribe making untruths intentionally, and with the purpose not of entertaining or out of error, but to pursue a personal goal. The elderly woman leader, named Wise, invented a word for the violation. "Lies," she spat it out, and the catarrh sound became the pronunciation of the new, despicable word. The male leader, Wide Shoulders, whose cynical view of Spirit Woman was the most fearless, slowly stood up and walked to the fire. There he turned slowly as if warming all his sides. He kept turning, slowly at first, then faster, until he was truly spinning. The attention of the whole tribe was on him now, Mother of 6's eyes the last to turn from the snoring Spirit Woman. Everyone in the tribe, at least as a child, had whirled until dizziness overcame them, and there was a growing fear that the leader would tumble into the fire. Only Wide Shoulders had practiced many nights for this moment, one he knew intuitively would come, and when he threw his arms wide and stopped and looked up at the night sky, he was as steady as a tree. He stood for many heartbeats, and then a falsetto keening seemed to come from the space above his head. His lips were barely parted. He had watched Spirit Woman very carefully during her many presentations of spirit voices. His experiments with making words without moving his lips, and in a voice that was not his voice, had succeeded when he learned to replace certain pops and sucks and other lip sounds with tongue and teeth sounds that were quite similar. Practicing a difficult thing until it became second nature was a lesson he had learned from hurling with the atlatl. He was fully prepared for this performance. He stretched his arms above his flung-back head and laced his fingers into a crude basket, took a deep breath, and screeched, "Lies! Lies!" The guitar rasp gave the new word fearsome gorge. "Not truth! Not truth!" He stretched truth in a pure tenor tone, opposite of lie. The effect on the tribe was like lightning from a clear sky. The screeching accusation multipathed around and through Wide Shoulder's handbasket, and seemed to come from everywhere at once, and it was loud. The tribe was steeped in the virtue of quiet, avoiding the enemies who had abused them in their ancestral lands, stalking skittish game, letting the seabirds stay at their fishing, and even rutting without arousing one's neighbor required quiet. This screech was not quiet. Wide Shoulders began a slow walk around the fire, now reaching its full crescendo, whirling showers of sparks into the still night sky. He lowered his arms and started rolling his head around his shoulders, another move he copied from Spirit Woman. He stopped when he came to Spirit Woman, prone on the sand. He dropped his chin to his chest, took deep breaths. One last word came in a suppressed screech from his motionless lips. "Lies!" Spirit Woman had stopped snoring. She convulsed, then thrashed her head, scraping her face in the sand. Voices in her head were rising louder than the terrible impeachment from Wide Shoulders. Lifting herself, she turned on the leader and began a wordless scream at him. Her fingers curled into claws, and she reached for him, a move he avoided with an effortless step back. Her face contorted in mindlessness, a visage that those around the fire would be haunted by long into the trek. Spirit Woman turned and ran into the sea. She ran with uncoordinated abandon, disappearing from the firelight before anyone thought to move. All heard the distant splashes of her long run in the shallows, then silence. Spirit Woman was never seen again by the tribe. Some said the spirits had led her into the deep waters and sung her to sleep. Next morning the leaders sent young runners up and down the coast to find her. After half a sun of fruitless searching, the migration continued apace. The leaders were concerned, but none of them spoke aloud of it.